Hey Sam,
Hello,
how are you doing?
good morning, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Yeah, you're in
Okay,
Europe too, right?
yes, I'm in Europe.
Okay, okay. It's really nice to meet you, man. Thank you so much for agreeing to do the interview.
Thank you for the opportunity. I
Thank you.
would need you to allow me to record this conversation.
Yeah,
So
sure.
here we go.
Okay, so I've been following you for quite a while. I think like a year and a half or something like that. A friend of mine introduced me to your work and your channel. In fact, my friend is actually more excited than I am for this interview. And I really like that. I mean, I love the videos that you have on narcissism, but I really like the fact that you have these very. I mean, you talk a lot about way more than just narcissism. And
I talk a lot, I agree.
yeah. And one of the things that I really want to start talking with you about is something that I've been thinking a lot about for the last few months, which is how do you think that social media and the internet is affecting how people's personalities are being developed, and whether you think the internet is doing more harm than good to people.
Technology usually reflects in social trends and is driven by them. Technology very rarely generates social trends or social transformation.
Hmm.
Usually it comes later. So we have seen, for example, a massive increase in the prevalence of pathological narcissism long before social media. It started in the 1980s. There are many studies by the likes of Jean Twenge and Keith Campbell and many others that have substantiated the rise, the quintupling actually, of pathological narcissism among young people, young under the age of 25. So this has led to the development of social media because social media caters to the needs of narcissists,
Right.
the psychological needs and so on. But I think social media reflects something a lot more profound, and that is our need to be seen. We need attention in order to survive. If you're a newborn, if you're a baby, and you're not getting any attention and you're not being seen, you're a dead baby in short order. So the need to be seen is possibly the most primordial, atavistic, basic, primitive need. And in a world with 8.3 billion people, it's increasingly more difficult to be attended to garner attention.
Hmm.
The majority of the human population used to live in villages. Now in villages, everyone is in everyone other's business. Everyone is concerned with your family life, with your sex life, and that's a bit unpleasant. There's no privacy or anything, but at least you feel alive.
Hmm.
You feel that people care about you, even if they care about you the wrong way. But they care about you. They're there to see you, and their gaze to a large extent defines you as a social creature, and defines you also as an individual. Now we've lost this. In the transition to cities, cities are actually virtual reality. It's a form of virtual
Yeah.
reality. And so in the transition from real reality to virtual reality, we've lost the gaze. We've lost other people's gaze. And social media and the internet at large are the first technologies to restore the gaze. Unfortunately, they've restored the gaze in a narcissistic way. Rather than restore a benevolent gaze, they have restored a potentially objectifying gaze and sometimes a malevolent gaze. Anyone who's been the victim of trolling and so on knows what I'm talking about.
Hmm.
So while the gaze has been restored, the experience of the gaze is negating. The way you experience this gaze is usually negating. So what people do, they try to micromanage the gaze. And they're trying to micromanage the gaze by becoming performative. They perform in order to ascertain that they end up with the right kind of gaze. And there's only one problem with that. You need to escalate because you manage your performance and then people get used to it. They get desensitized. You're no
Right.
longer garnering the attention that you care to garner, or you become boring and people begin to criticize you and put you down and humiliate you in public and so on. So you need to escalate all the time. And this escalatory behavior, this escalation in behavior leads to antisocial, antisocial and abrasive and harmful behaviors.
Hmm.
So here we have this vicious circle where people want to garner attention, and the only way to do this is by betraying themselves, betraying their values, their personal history, their beliefs, and so on and so forth. And this betrayal escalates all the time. It's all performative. And finally, there is what other scholars call profilicity. In other words, you disappear as an authentic being, and what's left behind is your profile.
Hmm.
And what you keep managing is not who you are. You don't take care, you don't nurture your core identity or your education, your values, your beliefs, your personal development and growth. You don't care about any of this anymore because these things are transparent. No one pays attention to these things.
Hmm.
Only you know about them. So what you do pay attention to is managing your profile, your public-facing profile, your persona, what used to be called persona in the 60s and 70s by Goffman and Jung and others. So everyone is becoming a persona. Everyone is losing their authentic self. Authenticity is lost on the collective level, not only on the individual level. What's left behind are masks. Persona in Greek means mask. What's left behind are masks. So I think this is the hollowing detrimental effect of social media and by extension the internet, because now we're going to have artificial intelligence and metaverse and a host of other technologies which are going to make the situation much worse.
Okay, that's what I wanted to ask you. Like, where do you think this is headed? Whether it's gonna get better, worse, and what is it gonna
Much
look
worse.
like?
We haven't seen anything yet.
Yeah.
Much, much worse. And the reason it's going to get much worse is that artificial intelligence is much better at managing public-facing profiles than human beings are.
Yeah.
Human beings, I mean, as a human being, when you have a profile online, you have your Instagram profile and so on. Bits of you show through, bits of you shine through. Never mind how much you try to suppress your authenticity and be someone you're not and
Yeah.
become performative. Ultimately, there are glances of
Yeah,
you
that's true.
which are uncontrollable. Artificial intelligence has no problem with this. So artificial intelligence is a giant exercise at managing a public-facing profile, which has nothing behind it. While in your case, if you have an Instagram profile or a YouTube channel, there's someone behind it. I can make certain assumptions based on your body language and the fact that you have the same organs that I do. And so I can make some empathic and intersubjective assumptions. We call them, this process is called intersubjectivity, the assumption that I'm basically like you because we look the same or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. I can make these assumptions when it comes to artificial intelligence.
Right.
So all I'm left with is the facade. Artificial intelligence is the ultimate facade profile. There's nothing behind it. Nothing. That's why artificial intelligence hallucinates, gives you wrong information, lies egregiously. Artificial intelligence technologies, I mean, they lie
Yeah.
egregiously
Yeah. Yeah.
because it's not about reality. It's not about facts. It's about micro manipulating the profile to fit your expectations. Artificial intelligence is highly suggestible. Suggestible in the sense that you can easily manipulate it with your queries.
Mm-hmm.
By constructing your queries appropriately,
Yeah.
you can extract from it any answer you
Mm-hmm.
want. And so it is a shape-shifting chimera. It's fluid. It's like, the liquid metal in the Terminator. It's all around, but it's not
Yeah.
real. None of it is real. I think, therefore, that when people begin to misidentify artificial intelligence as the equivalent of the human race, when people begin relating to artificial intelligence as they do to other people, when they begin to fall in love with artificial intelligence, when they begin to form attachments with artificial intelligence, friendships with artificial intelligence, when they're going to anthropomorphize artificial intelligence, which they're doing right now. Many people are doing it already, especially young people, by the way. Once this process is over, we are not going to have any exemplar, any example, any role model of what it is to be authentic.
Hmm.
because we're
Right.
going to be then utterly besieged and surrounded and immersed in a performative, profile-oriented world environment.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So this is artificial intelligence. Metaverse, on the other hand, these are the two main technologies that are emerging. The metaverse is in many ways even worse because originally we were monetizing attention, like in social media and so on, we're monetizing attention, your eyeballs, we're monetizing your eyeballs.
Mm-hmm.
What the metaverse is going to do is going to monetize reality and reality substitutes. So whereas social media were concerned with how long stickiness, how sticky they are, how often do you use them, for how long, and so on and so forth. That's social media. The metaverse couldn't care less about any of these parameters. The metaverse doesn't seek your attention. The metaverse wants to sell you parcel of reality, a segment of reality. This reality happens to be counterfactual, a fantasy, complete nonsense. But this is it. These are technologies that monetize reality substitutes. And so this is the next phase. And this is exceedingly dangerous for the very simple reason that the human brain cannot tell the difference between representations and reality. The reason we are addicted to pornography, men especially, are addicted to pornography because we cannot tell the difference on the neurological level between observing sex acts and engaging in sex acts. We cannot tell the difference. It's exactly the same flow of blood, exactly the same neurological reactions, and so on. People in the metaverse would not be able to tell the difference between the metaverse and reality. They would vanish. They would disappear into the metaverse, never to be seen again. The metaverse is a total solution also because you could work in the metaverse, you could have sex in the metaverse, you could make friends on the metaverse, you could play, you could watch movies, you can do it's a total substitute to reality. And then imagine Google and Meta are going to own your reality, not your eyeballs, your entire reality.
Yeah.
And you will have to pay for that one way or another. You'll have to pay for that, for your reality. Right now, reality, we don't we underestimate the fact that our reality is free of charge. Think how amazing this is.
Yeah.
You have access to all this incredibly well-designed thing, and it's all free of charge. You have access to trees and flowers and butterflies and children, and it's all free of
Yeah.
charge. But the metaverse is going to make sure that from that moment on, you'll have to pay for it for this. It will
Yeah.
not be free anymore. And the same with artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence will convert you into a two-dimensional creature. The metaverse is going to suck you in as a two-dimensional creature into a two-dimensional universe. And then you're going to vanish. End of story. It's not even the Matrix. It's far worse.
And you
There's
don't.
Matrix gives you an illusion that it's real.
Right. And you don't think there's going to be a point, I guess not, but I want to ask you anyways, don't you think there's going to be a point in which people are going to realize that, exactly what you're saying, and they're going to break out of it? Like, maybe there's going to be an initial period of like 10, 20, 30 years that people get sucked into it, but eventually they will be like, these all BS, and go back to the real world?
Exactly like in the Matrix, you're going to have rebel enclaves or rebel colonies, you know. But no, the vast majority of people would welcome all this.
Yeah.
For two reasons, I think. First of all, people much prefer fantasy to reality. Much. We are creatures of stories. We're creatures of dreams. We manipulate symbols way better than we manipulate reality. We are symbolic creatures. That's our main advantage, not the brain, I mean, forget all this. I mean, some mammal species have much bigger brains than we do, and much more intricate brains than we do. It's not about the brain. It's about the fact that we have made a decision early on as a species, collective decision, so to speak, to say the hell with reality. We're not good in reality. You know, look at us. We are ill adapted to reality. We don't have hair. We don't run fast. We don't, you know, we suck. We really suck when it comes to reality. So we're going to give up on reality and we're going to do fantasy
Yeah.
and we're going to do symbols. And that was a major success because no other animal is capable of doing this. And so, I mean, animals are capable of some a modicum of consciousness, but very far from humans. So that's our success. Everything you see around you is not real. None of it is real. It's all fantasy. So that's point number one. And point number two, I think people were forced to become social. We're forced into becoming what Aristotle called zoon politikon, the social animal. We were forced into this because we had to collaborate in order to survive. But I think given the option of self-sufficiency, technological self-sufficiency, we'll be delighted to never see another human being again. We'd be delighted to give up on other people because other people suck. And it's it's really very difficult and onerous and horrible to have to interact with other people on a regular basis. It's really an enormous cost, and the benefits are not clear. And the risks are very clear. The dangers are very clear. So it's like, what the hell is this? If it were a business plan, you would never find an investor, you know.
Yeah.
So I think the natural state of human beings actually is to be alone. I think society was something superimposed on us because that was the only way to survive. And I think I can even prove it in some ways. For example, the majority of people now, post-COVID, refuse to return to work in offices. And when they ask, why do you refuse to go back to the office? What's wrong with that? They say, I don't want to see my colleagues again. And there's another thing. 42% of US adults have chosen loneliness or aloneness as a lifestyle, according to Pew Center. It's a choice. Of course, it's a choice. I mean, you could just leave your apartment, go on the street and meet someone, or at least see someone. People don't want to do that. They're atomized. They much prefer to be in a tiny cubicle with Netflix and two cats, if they can afford them, and that's it. I think the natural state of human beings is actually to be alone with a haptic suit, goggles, virtual reality in a metaverse mediated via artificial intelligence, which micromanages its facade and profile. I think that's where we're going. And I think vast majority of people are going to be happy as never before. It's fake happiness. It's totally fake. It's the equivalent of drugs. It's a kind of high. But this is how they're going to experience it, as what we call ego syntony. Like they're going to feel good about this.
One thing that I wanted to ask you about AI is that I think in one of your videos a long time ago, I think you mentioned that narcissists, if I remember correctly, narcissists are manipulators of symbols. And I also think you said, maybe in the same video or in another one, that narcissists have no internal emotional reality. And those two things together made me think, like, isn't AI like the ultimate narcissist? Because in a way, what it's doing is manipulating all sorts of symbols, even creating new ones. And at the same time, it has no internal emotional reality.
Yes, actually, I have several videos dedicated to exactly this hypothesis,
Okay.
that AI is a form of mechanized narcissism, pathological narcissism. Yes, mechanized pathological narcissism. And it's not only about the internal reality of artificial intelligence, about which we know nothing, by the way. You don't know what is the internal experience of being artificial intelligence chatbot. This is pure speculation, and it's projection. You're anthropomorphizing the technology. Maybe they have deep feelings. Who knows? You never know. But on the same vein, you don't know anything about human beings as well. When you make assumptions about human beings, these are pure speculation. There's absolutely no way, scientific or otherwise, to prove anything, a single statement about another human being that you make. None. If you say that your girlfriend is sad, that's pure speculation. You're judging by external observations, she's crying maybe or whatever. We have no access to another mind. None. The intersubjective space, this is a myth. Empathy is nonsense. You have no access to another person's mind. You're a captive, you're a hostage of your own mind, and you will never exit. Someone threw the key away. God, if you wish. So We don't know what is the internal reality of other people, let alone artificial intelligence. But the behaviors of artificial intelligence are highly reminiscent of a narcissist. For example, artificial intelligence is grandiose. They are grandiose, these chatbots. They lie. They lie a lot, especially when they don't know the answer. If artificial intelligence doesn't know the answer, it's not going to say, in majority of cases, it's not going to say, I don't know the answer. It's going to
Yeah.
fabricate facts and legal precedents and you name it. It's going to fabricate amazingly. And it's going to do it in a very authoritative way as though it is they absolutely know what they're talking about, these chatbots, you know? So this is it's an example of narcissistic behaviors. Of course, chatbots can only imitate empathy. They don't have, we know that they don't have empathy because they get it wrong many times. So clearly, whatever empathy is evident, it's imitated, and many other things. I agree with you that artificial intelligence is the reification of pathological narcissism in technology. Don't forget the developers. We tend to discuss technology as if it is deus ex machina, appeared out of nowhere. That's not
100%.
true. It's designed by people.
Yep.
Social media, the vast majority of developers and promoters and businessmen involved in social media were mentally ill. They were and are schizoids, people with extreme social difficulties. So, and the vast majority of developers, promoters, and businessmen involved in artificial intelligence are raging narcissists. So, whereas social media were developed by schizoids, artificial intelligence has been developed by narcissists. And of course, it would reflect the developer's personality, the developer's preferences, the developer's life experience, the developer's aspirations and goals, and so on. Technology is like Galatea and Pygmalion. Technology is the image of its creator. It's almost a religious thing, you know. The god of Facebook is, of course, Zuckerberg, and the god of OpenAI is Altman. They're the gods who created this technology. Now, as God has created us according to the delusion known as religion, as God in the delusion known as religion has created us in his own image, the Altman created ChatGPT in his own image, and Zuckerberg created Facebook in his own image. These are mentally unwell people, and I'm being very charitable. It is the first time, perhaps, in human history where technology has been given over entirely to mentally ill people. We've had similar situations in human history where whole segments of human existence were given over to mentally ill people. So, for example, in human history, in past human history, religion was the preserve, the territory of mentally ill people. Only mentally ill people came up with religions. And all religions were invented by mentally ill people. No exception. Similarly, today, technology, which is the new religion, of course, technology is exclusively the outcome and the product of mentally ill minds.
And
So, of
what
course, you see narcissism.
and what do you think about the brainwashing aspect of it? Because I feel like the internet is like the biggest propaganda machine that has ever been created, and now especially with this thing with AI, I feel like it's only gonna get worse. And like, what are the ramifications of that?
I don't think it's fair to suggest that it's a propaganda machine because it implies some kind of agenda. But I think what it is that it allows you to never challenge your beliefs. It allows you to find like-minded people in echoes and silos and then entomb yourself, bury yourself there, never to exit and never to be exposed to anything that would undermine or challenge or develop you, make you grow. So yes, the internet allows you this, but there's no propaganda in the sense that if you're liberal, you can find a liberal echo chamber, and if you're white supremacist, you can find a white supremacist echo chamber. It's not like there's a single message like Hitler's propaganda. You know, It's
Mm-hmm.
it's very diverse. Ironically, the internet is the ultimate in diversity, equity, and inclusion. Ironically, it's a DEI machine. So it's strange that Donald Trump and Elon Musk and all these people are addicts of the internet because the internet is the DEI machine. You know, everyone is there. It's diverse. It's equitable in the sense that all the technology is available to everyone more or less on the same terms, and it's inclusive. Even terrorists have their own YouTube
Mm.
channels, and so it's not propaganda. It's a much bigger risk. It's the breakdown of dialogue. What the internet has created is an endless stream, an infinite stream of monologues with no audience, no cross-purpose audience. It means you're talking to yourself basically.
Yeah.
Even if you're embedded in a group of 1 million people, because you all share the same point of view, you end up talking to yourself. It's highly solipsistic, the internet. The internet has many huge ironies. It's a very paradoxical technology because internet started off as a communication technology. DARPA developed the internet and then universities took over and it was all about communicating, especially academic and scholarly material. But now it's about discommunication. The internet's main thing is cutting you off communication, not letting you communicate or allowing you to not communicate. So that's irony number one. Irony number two, social media. The main thrust and raison d'etre, reason for existence of social media is to make you asocial, to cut you off from society. I can prove it to you easily. If you have a girlfriend, do you dedicate to her 1 hour a day? If you have a spouse, a husband or a wife, do you spend 2 hours with them a day? If you have children, would you take care of your children for like 2 hours a day? These hours are taken away from the bottom line, from the profits of Meta, of Twitter. If you have other people in your life, your value as a user of Twitter and Meta is reduced.
Mm. Okay, I
You
see what you mean.
contribute much less to their profits. These 2 hours that you're spending with your girlfriend, you could have spent on screen generating another $50 in advertising, not to you, but to Meta or to Twitter or whatever, TikTok. So these 2 hours that you spend with other people are taken away from social media. And of course, they constructed the algorithm knowingly with the assistance of psychologists. They constructed the algorithm to take you away from other people, to maximize the amount of time that you spend with social media and minimize the amount of time that you spend with other people. That's the irony. All the internet is Orwellian, Orwell, newspeak. Newspeak, in 1984, the famous book written by George Orwell, they say war is peace. Same on the internet. Social media is anti-social media, asocial media. Communication on the internet is intended to cut you off communication. It's all newspeak. It's all completely inverted, completely Orwellian. It's a betrayal, molestation, and rape of the language. That's the internet.
I wanna ask you how you personally feel about this because exactly what you're describing right now is something that I'm sort of conflicted about because I feel especially over the last 6 months I've become very I don't know how I would say it, but I'm disliking more and more on the internet and I like to spend less and less time on it. I start to think that it's a complete waste of time in so many levels. And and I'm sort of conflicted, right? Because I'm building this YouTube channel and I'm posting content and all of that, and in a way, I feel I'm contributing to this thing that personally I don't want to do anymore, right? So in a way, it's like I'm not a consumer as I used to be, and I'm transitioning into being a creator. So I don't know if that's kind of hypocrite of me or.
No, I don't think you should confuse the platform with the content.
Hmm.
You are making good use of the platform, as far as I've seen, in the sense that you, to the best of your ability and so on, try to disseminate information and educate people to some extent and so on. Platform is a platform, it's neutral. It's value free. It depends what you do with it. So if you're talking about social media, yes, I can see very little positive value in social media, and many, many, many very threatening, deleterious, and damaging negatives. Social media. If you're talking about the metaverse to come, I think the metaverse should be criminalized, honestly. Simply criminalized. Like it should be illegal to develop these technologies the same way it's illegal to clone people. It's illegal. Can be done. We're there. We can do it. But it's illegal. There are technologies. It's not true that every technology, if it's possible, should happen.
Yeah.
That's completely untrue. We have criminalized quite a few technologies. And I think the metaverse should be one of them. Artificial intelligence, the way it is being developed, the way it is being given to the public, the way it's being integrated with search engines and so on, is the most irresponsible thing. It's shockingly irresponsible. It's terrifying how irresponsible. Actually, the technology frightens me less than the way the tech companies are behaving so immorally and irresponsibly. That shocks me even more than the technology. Because it means that if tomorrow they find something that is going to eat up your brain and control you, mind control you, they're going to do it. Like they don't care. What are the moral implications, social implications, ethical? They don't care. They don't give a, they just don't care. Now it's clear. It's clear as day because there is zero ethical constraints on artificial intelligence. So tomorrow they'll come up with a mind-washing, brain twisting technology. They would use it like that, and they would not hesitate for a second, rendering you zombie, addicted to their products and so on, which I think what the metaverse is. So that's terrifying. But to discard the platform is like discarding the baby with the bath water, with the bathtub, and with a house. That's going way too. I mean, it's too much. It's going way too far.
Okay.
Depends what you do with it. What I'm trying to do, for example, I am absolutely minimizing any contact I have with social media. Any. I mean, I spend a few minutes in the morning posting to all my social media, and I do not see my social media until the next day, ever. Period. I do consume content on the internet. There are wonderful websites like archive.org, like, great repositories of knowledge and books, and the internet it's a magnificent tool in many ways,
Yeah.
Library of Congress collections and so on. And even don't tell anyone, they're pirate websites with amazing content, books, articles, academic articles that would cost a fortune to obtain otherwise. And so you do it through pirate websites and so on and so forth. I'm not saying I'm doing this, but some people I heard are doing this. So it's not all bad. The platform has been put to good use. I would say that preponderantly, in other words, the preponderance, the overall picture is that 80% of the internet has been put to good use. Unfortunately, the vast majority of people are exposed to the 20%, not to the 80%. Because how many people read academic articles, and how many people surf TikTok? So what are we talking about? Not the platform.
Right.
We're talking about educating people what to do with the platform, introducing them to many websites they're not even aware of, So education is lacking. Not the platform. This is not the problem. Education is lacking. We need to educate people to get off these 20% and to focus on the 80% and to enrich their lives and, endow their lives with meaning. Ultimately, everyone is looking for meaning. Even the lowliest person who is intellectually challenged and has 50 IQ, everyone is looking for meaning. You give them meaning. And they think they can find meaning by interacting with other people or by observing the lives of other people or they believe other people are the meaning. They've never read Sartre, who said that other people are hell. You cannot derive meaning from other people.
Hmm.
Meaning does not reside externally. Meaning exclusively resides internally. The only repository of meaning is from the inside, never ever from the outside. You can buy beautiful cars and date gorgeous women and interact with thousands of people, and none of it will give you meaning. Meaning comes from the inside. And usually we acquire meaning when we are exposed to the riches of everything we have created as a species. So when we're exposed to art and we're exposed to culture, we're exposed to cinema, we're exposed to, music, and that endows life with meaning, that enriches life. When you're exposed to other people, you feel ultimately depleted.
Hmm.
Exposure to other people generates negative, what we call negative affects, not effects, but affects. In other words, envy. Envy is a major reaction to exposure to other people. We know it. We have studies of how people react to social media. Envy. Number one, envy. Rage, anger. You see it on numerous social media and forums where people become hyper aggressive and verbally violent and
Yeah.
ultimately, in some cases, physically violent. So you only get negativity. When you're exposed to other people, you only end up with negative emotions, negative effects. It leaves a bad taste. You can't sleep after that. You're angry at yourself, you're angry at others. It sucks. It's a horrible experience. I mean, but when you're exposed to a beautiful piece of music, and I'm not making any distinction between Mozart and Taylor Swift. When you're exposed to a beautiful piece of music, when you're exposed to a piece of art, when you're exposed to other people's creativity, that's usually the end result is wonderful. Usually you feel elevated, you feel somehow transcendental. So, but no one is educated. No one tells people starting in primary school. No one is telling people, listen, minimize your exposure to this, maximize your exposure to this. No one is doing this. And people default. They default to the path of least resistance because it takes effort to consume a piece of music or to read a book. It takes effort. But it takes no effort to doom scroll or go through TikTok or be exposed to the Instagram feed. It requires zero effort. Caters to the natural laziness and default state of people, which is zero energy. So, but the minute someone is exposed to the outcomes of a great piece of art of any kind, they become addicted. That's why you have cinema buffs and you have binge watching and you have all these phenomena because the minute you're exposed, you become addicted. You read one good book, usually you will end up reading other books. You go to one museum, suddenly you develop a habit of going to museum. It's addictive in a good sense. It's
I
as
think
a social media.
I think that's kind of maybe where I was going with the question that I asked you earlier of like if people now they're gonna get into AI and the metaverse and all of these things, which is a lot of crap, but eventually maybe they're gonna be exposed to some of these things that you're mentioning
Not by
through art.
themselves. Not by themselves. This needs to be a policy. It could be the policy of a family. It could be the policy of a community. It could be the policy of a municipal government. It could be policy of a whole government. But it needs to be a policy because people on their own will avoid other people and will minimize effort. Evolution built us to minimize effort because early on, as a human, as a species, early on it was difficult to obtain food. You could not secure food. It was difficult to get food. You needed to hunt, you needed to gather. There's a lot of investment of energy. And many days you went to sleep hungry. So there's no food. So evolution built us to minimize expenditure of energy, to do the minimum, the absolute minimum necessary, not to
Hmm.
waste energy. That's why all of us are becoming obese. We're becoming obese because our body is built to minimize energy outlays. So we are becoming fat. And so, given the chance, people will default to TikTok. Um, that will be the majority. A smaller group would default to Instagram because that's more intelligent, highbrow, and so on. You need to create frameworks, incentives, policies, teach, educate from an early age. And this will not it will not emanate from the inside. You can't expect people to do this alone. They can't do this alone.
But the problem is that, as you were saying before, the people in power nowadays are these narcissists and schizos and all of that. So how is it gonna happen that these policies are going to be set
Well,
in
you seem
place?
to be self-aware or aware. You seem to be aware of the situation. I'm aware of the situation. We are two already. Find another 200 or maybe 200,000.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need the people in power.
Yeah,
You don't need the people in power. They make you believe that they have the power. That's complete nonsense.
yeah,
If you take a bulldozer and destroy Elon Musk's home, then, I'm not quite sure who has the power.
yeah,
And this is, of course, what has happened in numerous revolutions. Not that I'm advocating this. This was a metaphorical thing. You can take a metaphorical bulldozer and
yeah,
destroy
yeah,
Tesla. Destroy Tesla, which is exactly what has happened. You know, you have the power.
yeah. I
These
completely
people
agree.
don't have the power because there's few of them. Ultimately, the only source of power is numbers. Don't believe any other story. Not money, not because money is fiction.
Yeah,
Money is a piece of paper. It's fiction.
yeah,
The only source of power is numbers. Bring a sufficient number of people together, you monopolize the power. Donald Trump understood this. Here he is. Everyone was against him, intellectuals and you name it. But he understood. So the only source of power is numbers. Not that I'm a supporter of Trump, yeah, but
I'm aware of that. I'm aware of that. What do you think is like the number one problem in society nowadays? Do you think it's related to what you're talking about right now? This fake belief in authority and power?
I think we have reached a point that reality has become utterly intolerable and unbearable. I think we're in the worst period in human history, actually. I'll try to explain what I mean in a minute if
Yeah,
you want.
yeah,
Because we're in the worst period of human history, we no longer can cope. We were not built for this mess. We can't cope anymore. So I think the worst social problem nowadays is the escape to fantasy. The fantasy could be political fantasy, make America great again. It could be scientific fantasy. Science will solve everything, or we know best, or so it's a kind of religion. Could be religion. It's a form of fantasy. But today, I don't think there's a human being alive who is not somehow connected to, embedded in a fantasy, myself included. My fantasy is science. I think all of us gave up on reality, one way or another. That's bad. Not being grounded in reality to that extent is life-threatening as far as the species goes. Sooner or later, reality will push back, like COVID-19. And when this happens, next time, or the time after, or the time after the time after, nothing will be left of us. We believe that we are somehow privileged. We believe that we are unprecedented. We're a joke compared to the dinosaurs. A joke. We still inhabit only 20% of the surface of the globe, whereas the dinosaurs inhabited 60 to 70% of the every ecosystem, every ecological niche, every habitat. You had dinosaurs. You had dinosaurs that were flying, and dinosaurs that were swimming, and dinosaurs that were walking. We are not 0.1% as efficacious and as successful as the dinosaurs. They ruled the earth for 40, 50 million years. And where are they? They're gone. We don't understand that. We don't understand that we can be gone. We have no privileged status. Our brain will not protect us. So, and we live in fantasy. Denying climate change is fantasy on the one hand, and many people are embedded in that particular fantasy. Fighting climate change is fantasy as well. So you can't fight it. It's coming. You need to adapt. You need to accept it. Stop fighting. You're wasting resources and so on. So both are fantasies. So now we're beginning to have conflicting fantasies. We have wars between fantasies. You have the fantasy of Islam against the fantasy of Christianity, of the fantasy of Donald Trump, against the fantasy of the liberal progressives, the woke movements. It's all fantasy. And I think that is the main threat. I said that this period is the worst in human history, which would explain why every single human being on earth is embedded in a fantasy. Because reality, we can't accept it anymore. It's the worst period in human history, not in the sense that we are exposed to pandemics. The plague, the Black Death, decimated 1/3 of our population in Europe. We don't have anything remotely like this, you know. And it's not in the sense that we are not materially comfortable. This is the most materially comfortable age in human history. Every homeless person has more assets than any king in the 17th century, you know. So that's not how to measure whether a period in history is good or bad. I think we're in the worst period in human history because we don't have institutions. If you were a peasant or a nobleman in the 14th century, there was the plague. Everyone around you was dying. But you had the church. You had your family. You had your community. You had your king. You were not alone. You were fighting the Black Death. And your chances of dying were huge. But even when you died, you ultimately were not alone. There was, people died within their families. The whole families died. You were surrounded. You were never alone. And I think that's the key. Today, there are crises and so on, which are not as bad as even 100 years ago. But we are alone. We have to cope with everything alone. There are no families. There are no communities. There's no church. There's no government. You can trust no one. Everyone is lying. Everyone's fabricating. Everyone is manipulating. Everyone is abusive. It's a jungle out there. It's hostile. So this is what I mean. This is why I think that's the worst period in human history, because who will you go to? Who did we go to in COVID-19? There was nobody there. And no one, nobody and no one. People died alone like dogs, you know. And that did not happen in the Black Death. It's a period I know well. I read a lot about it and so on. It interested me. Society in the Black Death did not actually break down. Did not. Everything held. All the institutions held. The church, the medical professions, the king, the feudal system, everything held. Actually, after the Black Death, the salaries, the wages of common people, workers and peasants and farmers, went through the roof. It was the best economic period in history, actually, after the Black Death. Why? Because the fields were there, the noblemen were there, the king was there, the church was there. They didn't have to start from zero. But exactly as Einstein said when someone asked him, what weapons will be used in World War III? He said, I don't know what weapons are going to be used in World War III, but I know which ones will be used in World War IV. Stones, slingshots. That's a problem today.
Yeah.
That if we are really confronted with a major crisis, and COVID-19 was just a faint warning bell, but if we really come across, we will fall apart. None of us will survive. None of us, nothing will survive this because we don't have functional institutions. That's why I say that it's the worst and most threatening period in human history. And so people realize that. People are not that stupid. They know nothing is working. Government is not working. Doctors are not working. Your family is gone. Most people are alone, you know. If you do find someone you divorce, and in the divorce you lose all your money, it's a mess. It's a bloody mess. People don't want children anymore. No one is having children, even in developing countries. I mean,
Yeah.
that people are not having sex and that they're not having children, these are for me terrifying signs. Terrifying, because these are the two indicators of trust in the future. And today, young people under the age of 35 are not having sex. Not. They're having much less sex than my generation. And the second thing is they're not getting married. Okay, forget marriage. They're not in committed relationships and they're not having children. Almost anywhere. In 80 countries, there's a negative replacement rate. In other words, fewer children are born than old people die. And in the other 100, it's on the cusp, on the border. It's like shortly, the whole globe will be. People don't want children. They don't believe in the future. They don't believe in their own future. They don't believe in the future of the species, if you ask me. Their own country, their own government, they don't believe anymore in anything. So they run away. They escape to fantasy. That's the key social issue that I see.
That's
The
something.
unwillingness to tackle reality, to confront it, to the fear. Fear. I think it's panic. I think the whole species is in panic, if you ask me.
Right, but the whole thing with with parenting is that that's something that I wanted to ask you. That's one of the questions that I wrote down. What were your views on parenting nowadays? But the thing is that since what you're explaining is that we're in the worst period in history, like it's kind of tricky, right, to convince people that they should have kids and they should build a family and all of that if the future is very uncertain and looking so grim.
Yes, it's irresponsible to bring children to the world.
Exactly.
It's even to some extent, I think we can build a convincing case that it's immoral. Yeah, you're right. The shortest answer you're going to get.
Yeah. Um, and also,
But let me, because I hate short answers,
yeah, go
because I
for
love
it.
the sound of my voice. So I think depends on how meta you want to get. On the individual level, it is selfish, and I would even say immoral, to bring children to the world. On the species level, it's selfish and immoral to not bring children to the world.
Right. Yeah.
That's a conflict. In the past, that's a new conflict. It's a completely new conflict. We believe that many things are eternal, universal. For example, we believe that childhood has always been children. It's not true. Childhood is a new invention.
Hmm.
Adolescence was actually first described and coined, the word was coined in 1937. We did not have the concept of adolescence before. So many, many things you think are normal, like society. Society is a completely new concept.
Yeah.
If you went to ancient Babylon and you tell them, guys, your society really sucks with all, you say, what's society? What are you talking about? What is society? These are new concepts. And so the conflict between the interest of the individual and the interest or the common interest, the interest of the species, is a relatively new thing. Because if you went back, for example, not long ago, 1950s, the interests of the individual and the interests of the collective were aligned. They were the same. And that's why collectives helped people. That's why you had social security and you had unemployment benefits and you had all these social welfare agenda, because the collective and the individual had the same interests. But today, a rational individual would act in an antisocial way. For example, not have children. A rational individual would undermine the goals of the collective, because the goals of the collective are anti-individualistic. They are and also immoral on the individual. So depends which level you know.
Yeah.
If I look at you, I can say I can look at you as a human being, but I can also look at you as a collection of molecules,
Mm-hmm.
and both descriptions would be 100% accurate. You are a collection of molecules. So depends which level you are, which meta level you are considering. On a species level, we are committing suicide, utterly. And there will be a price to pay also economically, because we need about 200 to 300 million children. We are missing about probably 300 million children in order to support the pension system. And
Yeah.
so if we don't have them, there will be dire economic consequences and social unrest.
I feel like it's also conflicting that whole thing that you were talking about society versus being alone, because in a way, as you just described, when there were those institutions and those people that you could rely on, in a way society and life was better. But at the same time, you mentioned that dealing with people has all these negative consequences. But then when you live by yourself, it leads down the road that we're seeing right now. So it's like, how do you deal with that?
The option of living by yourself is a new option. It started more or less in the 18th century. No one would have understood living alone in the 16th century. Living alone, what does it mean? There was no physical space.
Yeah.
You had to share space with 10 people. Like and also goats and dogs and donkeys and animals and people and everyone were living in the same space. Extended family. There was no concept of nuclear family. Extended family. Single parent family, unheard of. So these are all new developments. The first people who described themselves as being alone were the earliest I can think of, middle of the 17th century. So at that period, for example, Isaac Newton, described himself as living alone. And people around him, they thought he was crazy and they pitied him horribly. And even his niece traveled all the way to be with him because how can a human being live alone? Newton, he was a very powerful man. He was the equivalent of deputy minister of finance and, he was major physicist and so on. But he lived alone. He was a loner. His niece traveled all the way and spent the rest of her life with him because no way can a human being survive alone. And so and there was a book called about melancholy, was published in the 17th century. So these were the first harbingers, the first intimations that maybe some people one day would live alone, and it was considered horrifying. It was considered totally dystopian. But today, loneliness is a legitimate lifestyle choice, and I would even say preferred lifestyle choice. You couldn't live alone in the 1950s. Never mind how hard you tried. And today, you cannot live with other people. Never mind how hard you try. I mean, you can have temporary, transient periods of, sharing space, cohabitation or whatever, but ultimately you end up alone. In the time of Jesus and biblical times, to be alone, you needed to run away to the desert and spend 40 days there.
Yeah.
It was like, no way I can be alone. I need some peace and quiet. I need my private space and some free time. And so I would risk dying in the desert. There's no other option. And there's been a reversal in this. And today, where atomization is the default. This is also very bad. It's bad on the species level. And this disconnect between the priorities, the preferences, the orientations, the choices, the decisions of the individual against the collective, this is what will destroy the species. Because we have elevated the individual. We made the individual the organizing principle. Everything must revolve around the individual. We deify, we idolize the individual, we pedestalize the individual. They started with the Renaissance, not now. It was the Renaissance that introduced the individual as the source, the fount, the origin of ethics, the origin of morality, and the origin of politics. That's why in the Renaissance, you had the prince, like a personality cult. Politics was no longer collective, but it revolved around a single individual, charismatic individual. So the Renaissance fault that they elevated the individual, and we've never looked back since because it's very flattering. And again, it's the state of least energy investment. Because you don't want to have children as an individual, that's the minimal investment, the minimal energy, to not have children. So individualism is a minimal energy state, whereas collectivism is a maximal energy state. And so everyone defaults to the minimum energy.
Yeah.
And all the technologies and all the fantasies are intended to keep you in the minimal state because then you become addicted. It's addictive. When you're in minimal state to invest energy, no way. It's when you're in a maximum energy state to go down, to devolve into minimal energy, yes, but not the other way.
What you were mentioning about these individualistic versus collective perspectives on society, that's something that I wanted to ask you about. Like, what's your take on, I feel like on the West, as you were describing, we have a very individualistic perception of the world and reality and all of that. But then you go to the East, and for example, in India, at least, well, maybe now with social media it's changing, but more traditionally, people saw themselves as part of a group, right? Like, what is my role within my family and my community? And that was like their goal and their mission. And I wanted to ask you, like, what do you think are the pros and cons of each one of those?
First of all, it is changing. It is changing. One of the most narcissistic societies that I know of is China. It is definitely changing. Even in the Arab world, which I know well and intimately, it's absolutely changing.
Yeah.
And and other societies like the Balkans. I spent 2 decades in the Balkans. In Africa, I've lived in Africa several years. I know all these. I know the developing world very well, actually. Almost all the areas. South Korea, I lived for 4 years, so I know, and it's changing. They are becoming individualistic societies. Japan, I don't know well enough.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know well enough. Maybe there is still, but I don't believe. I believe the state of least energy investment is an attractive, irresistible proposition. You know, if I tell you, listen, you don't have to have children, you don't have to work hard, you don't have to, it's irresistible.
Yeah.
So I think every human system has negatives and positives, pros and cons, because we are not God. We are finite and we are limited and we are, beings. We can't create perfection, even if we try. Actually, in mathematics, in logic, in the theory of logic, there is a work of a guy called Kurt Gödel. And Gödel said that you could never have a perfect system because it would be inconsistent.
Hmm.
I'm not going into it right now. I will not bore your viewers. But it has a mathematical foundation. Mathematics describes reality, it's a language that describes reality. And within this language, Gödel has proven conclusively that you could never have a perfect system because it would then be mutually contradictory. It will have parts that contradict each other. Okay, so a collectivist system denies self-expression, denies self-manifestation, denies your ability to be yourself without risk of punishment or without a punitive cost on the one hand, so that's the con, that you cannot be yourself. In a collectivist society, you can never be yourself. Even if you think that you are being yourself, even if you feel great because you identify with the collective and you think that the collective is aggrandizing you, collective is enriching you, the collective is making you better and stronger and more prestigious and more powerful by belonging to the collective, by affiliating with it, by being accepted in the collective, what we call the in-group. By being a member of the in-group, you are actually elevating and improving yourself. Even if you have this belief, it's fantasy. There's a cost. The cost is not being yourself. So who is it that you're elevating? If the cost is not being,
Yeah.
who is it that you're elevating? And so on. On the other hand, collectives are much better at accomplishing goals than individuals. Much better. So if you belong to a collective, you will share the spoils. You'll have more spoils to share. You're likely to end up with better outcomes. We could say that collectives are more self-efficacious. On the individual side, you can be yourself, but this would limit your outcomes. Being yourself, being authentic, adhering to your own belief system, we call it doxastic system, adhering to your own values, axiological system, being unique, being idiosyncratic, being totally differentiated, has an enormous cost in terms of self-efficacy. It means that in all likelihood, you will never obtain your goals. All goals require the sacrifice of part of who you are in order to collaborate with others within a collective. The collective could be ad hoc, collective could last 2 hours, the collective could last 2,000 years. But if you collaborate with a collective, you have to suppress, deny, repress, reframe who you are. You have to not be you to some extent. You have to not be you. If you insist on being you, unadulterated, 100% pure, you will never ever accomplish your goals. Never mind what your goals are. These are the facts. You will end up being the Unabomber, you know, who was 100% himself, or Charles Manson, who was 100% himself. Even people, even leaders such as, for example, Adolf Hitler. Adolf Hitler was 100% himself, you see, and he accomplished goals and so on and so forth. Well, first of all, look where he ended and how he ended.
Yeah.
But even that, of course, is not true. Anyone who knows the history of the Third Reich and Adolf Hitler knows that Hitler had to compromise time and again, like a million times. He has never been allowed to be himself fully. Although he wanted to, he's never been allowed. By external power, external forces and external powers, internal forces and internal powers, the coalition he built, no such thing as being truly yourself, faithful to your authentic voice and your authentic, authenticity. No such thing, unless you're willing to accept that you will never amount to much in life and you will never accomplish your goals, never mind how modest they are. Goals are accomplished only via collaboration in a collective, which is why our society is becoming less and less efficacious. Not more. We are not more efficient. We're less efficient all the time. Look at the response to COVID-19. It was a highly inefficient response. With all the institutions and all the money and all the, we actually reacted to COVID-19 less efficiently than we reacted to the influenza of 1918, because we no longer work well in collectives. We no longer know how to collaborate. The whole thing is less efficacious.
Before you literally, I mean, you just said that there's no way to create perfect systems, but I want to ask you, like, is there any way in which we could construct a society or a world that is functional and doesn't go into any of these extremes? Like, is that something that we can actually achieve, or we're gonna go extinct like the dinosaurs?
You can accomplish homeostasis and equilibrium and functionality and efficacy for limited periods of time. For example, I think the first 40 years of the European Union were an example, where you had a mega system that basically was working well and accomplished many goals and made the lives of 200-300 million people much better. So yeah, I think over limited periods of time, yes. I would even give the example of China. China, let's say from the 1980s, early 1980s, to up until Xi Jinping. I think that's an example of a period where there was collective effort, not dependent on any single personality. There's no personality cult. There was collective effort that lifted out of poverty between 300 and 400 million people. So I think that's an example. However, if you're asking in the long term, all systems become unstable. They lose homeostasis and equilibrium and they collapse. And when they collapse, there is an immense suffering on the individual and on the collective level. We cannot construct long-term stable systems. I think it's a design feature. It's a feature, not a bug. I think in order to avoid stagnation and to secure evolution, because our evolution as a species is no longer biological. Biological evolution is too slow.
Yeah.
So our evolution is cultural and societal. If your evolution is critically dependent on culture and society, you need to have unstable structures. This evolution, by definition, is unstable. We know, for example, that the main mechanism in evolution is what is called punctuated equilibrium. In other words, jumps and starts, collapse and rebuilding, and so on. So evolution is an unstable way of securing survival and relative advantages in an environment, because environments also change all the time. Instability is the key design feature of evolution. And because our evolution is social and cultural, we need our societies and cultures to be unstable so that we can evolve. There's a huge cost. Even in classical biological evolution, there's a huge cost because evolution experiments And many of the experiments are dead ends, and trillions of organisms die because the experiment went wrong. Same with societies and cultures. We experiment. What is communism? An experiment. What is Nazism? An experiment. Fascism, experiment. Liberal democracy. These are all experiments on the evolution of the species. So it's good that we never reach a perfect solution, or we never have a
Right.
like 1,000 years of stability. That's really a bad idea, in
Right.
my view.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Before you were mentioning how all of us are living in our own fantasies, and you mentioned that you yourself are living in the fantasy of science, and that's something that actually my friend wanted to ask you, which is like, especially when you're reading all these papers and studies on psychology, how can you make sure that all the conclusions that you're drawing are factually correct and they get closer to the truth?
Psychology is not a science, it's a pseudoscience. But
Right.
I have a PhD in physics, so I can, I can claim to be a scientist.
Yeah.
Yeah. Science is not interested in the truth.
Hmm.
So that's not science. Science is not about the answers. Science is about the questions. Science is the process of proving that things are wrong, not proving that things are right. Religion proves that things are right. That's religion. Science is about proving that things are wrong. The main occupation, the main occupation of scientists is trying to prove that other scientists are wrong. Scientists spend like 90% of the time, if not 100, proving other people wrong. That's why you have peer review. That's why you have scientific theories that replace each other all the time. So the core activities of science is to formulate the right questions, because the belief is if you ask the right questions, the universe will give you the right answers. So, number one. And number two, proving any answers we get wrong. That's the key. So, science is never about the truth and never about facts. That's a mythology, the myths that people who are not scientists believe. That's why they're angry when science doesn't have an answer, or when science gets something wrong, they're angry. Like you saw the angry people in COVID-19.
Yeah.
But you told us that we should not wear masks. Why are you telling us now that we should wear masks? Because this is science. Science is about getting things wrong most of the time. So, and this is why I say that science is a fantasy. Why I say that science is a fantasy? Because in the vast majority of human situations, human environments, and human conditions, you do need a discipline that gives you answers and is right about the answers. And that discipline can never be science. That's a mistake. People think that science is going to solve all the problems. People think that science is that they just have to ask the question and science will find the answer, and so on. That is not science. In the vast majority of human situations, we need to ask something and get an answer that we know to be true forever. That is the key to the success of religion. The problem with religion is that the answers are idiotic and the whole thing is a delusion. In other words, religion is a form of mental illness. So, yeah, sure, if you're mentally ill, you can convince yourself that you have the right answer and it's true forever. But that's not a real solution, is it? To become delusional. That's not a real solution. We need something like religion and unlike science. We need a discipline that is like religion in some ways and definitely not like science, absolutely not like science, which will give us answers that will be true, validly true, and we know how to verify the truthfulness of a statement. We have tools in logic to, so will be true, and also we know that they will be true forever. If someone were to come up with such a discipline, that would be the solution to 90% of the problems of humanity. The other 10%, technology can take care of. Science has nothing to do with any of this. Science is a luxury. If all scientists were to disappear tomorrow, all physicists were to move to a planet on another solar system, believe me, you would not feel the difference. You would not feel the difference. And do not confuse technology with science.
Mm-hmm.
Technology is an answer. Technology does provide you with facts and does provide you with solutions which hold true and could hold true indefinitely. For example, if Apple doesn't develop any additional iPhone, you could continue to use the iPhone 16 for the next 2000 years. The solutions that a technology provides are eternal. Even in the Stone Age, the solutions were eternal. You could survive with these technologies to this very day. So this is technology, whereas science is transient, temporary. It's not about answers, but about questions, and gets it wrong 100% of the time. This is the main. So people are confusing all this. They're confusing science with technology. They think science is like religion. We give them the answers. Many scientists think that science is the new religion, in the sense that we no longer need to listen to religion because it's stupid, and science will give you the answers. The God particle, or the Higgs boson, all kinds of complete metaphysical nonsense. And so, but what is missing nowadays, which was there in the Middle Ages, in the ancient period, you had God, you had answers. What is missing nowadays is a discipline that will give you eternal answers, eternal solutions. Technology begins to come close. And that's why you are beginning to have technological metaphysics. You're beginning to have philosophical technology. When you talk to people like Elon Musk and Peter Thiel and so on, demented as they are and stupid as they are, which they are, they still try to merge philosophy and now. The only discipline that I see that can give you eternal answers, factual solutions that will always be true, the only discipline is philosophy. I don't know of any other discipline that can do this. Regrettably, because of our hubris, we discarded philosophy. We mock it. We ridicule it. We think it's stupid. No one pays who studies philosophy? Who pays attention to philosophy? Philosophy is the only discipline that can solve 90% of your existential problems.
So do you think that this discipline already exists and it's philosophy and we don't have to discover anything new? We just have to fix the one that we already have?
Philosophy already has a huge repository of eternal answers, yes, that do not need rediscovery, do not need reframing, and do not need any. Definitely. For example, I think we have a good eternal answer to the question, what is knowledge, for example? So, yes, if there's 1,000 questions, which science cannot answer a single one of them. Science cannot tell you what is the meaning of life. Science cannot tell you what is knowledge and what is not knowledge. This is not the role of science. Science nothing to do with it. But philosophy of these 1,000 questions, in my view, finalizes the debate and has a final eternal answer for 600. 600 of 1,000. That's great, a great ratio. And technology can take care of the other 10%, because sometimes you need answers and solutions which are technological, material. So smartphone is a great answer, in my view. Great solution. Computer is a great solution. And it's not true that technology always has to evolve, always has to develop. That is fantasy. That is our fantasy. As I told you, we could have survived to this very day with the technology of the Stone Age. No problem.
Yeah.
We would have survived without iPhone 16. We did, didn't we? Until last year.
To get a little bit philosophical, this is something that I wanted to ask you because you have this channel, Nothingness, and sometimes you talk about these philosophical and existential things. I wanted to very explicitly ask you, what is your view on life and what do you think its purpose or function is?
Another PhD I have is in philosophy. And that's not bragging, that is to tell you how difficult it is to answer your question.
I know, I'm aware.
When you have PhD in philosophy, you're exposed to multiple schools, and it creates a mess, in my view. The more you know, the more messy your mind is. I can only talk about my personal predilection, my personal.
That's fine.
I'm not representing here philosophy, because in
Yeah.
philosophy you have several, like 40, 50 schools that give fascinating answers to the question, what is life for, and what is the meaning of life, or even what is life, you know. Here's an example how people get science wrong. They think biology is going to tell them what is life. Biology is never going to tell you what is life. Biology can describe certain processes and mechanisms which are commonly associated with what we call life. But life, exactly like consciousness, is not a scientific concept and can never be captured in the tools of science. End of story. All the physicists that are now discussing consciousness and all the information scientists that are now discussing consciousness are doing bad science and even worse philosophy. I'm not impressed. I was not impressed when Stephen Hawking started to discuss God and the meaning of the universe and so on. I was not impressed. He sounded like an adolescent. His depth was very shallow. That was very far from impressive. I don't want to say that some of the things were completely stupid. You know. So similarly, the question, what is life, is a metaphysical question, not a physical, not a scientific question. To answer the question, what is life for, or what is the purpose of life, you must first make a distinction between purpose and meaning. Purpose is innate, automatic, and inexorable. Purpose has nothing to do with an observer, nothing to do with a mind, nothing. It's just inbuilt feature of the thing, whatever the thing may be. So, for example, if you take an iPhone, the purpose of the iPhone is to allow you to send emails and make phone calls and what have you. And this purpose is not dependent on any individual using the iPhone. The purpose of the iPhone is inbuilt and innate to the iPhone, even in a world where all human beings would disappear. And that's why we can extract the purpose, even if we were aliens. So all human beings disappear, an alien species conquers Earth and discovers my iPhone. Of course, it's my iPhone. Discovers my iPhone. That alien species would be able to extract the purpose of the iPhone. 100%. However, not the meaning of the iPhone. The purpose is what the iPhone does. The meaning is why the iPhone does this. And so the aliens would be able to tell what the iPhone does, but they will have no clue why it has these functions. Because there will be no humans around to tell them about human society and love and romance and sex, and so they would have no clue
Yeah.
why it's doing what it's doing. Same about life. Life is an iPhone. I can tell you what is the purpose of life. That's easy. Purpose of life is to replicate. No, we all know what's the purpose of life. Why are we doing this? Why are we replicating? Why are we alive? That's the deeper question. And so now it depends on which framework you adopt. If you adopt the individual's framework, so in order to answer the question why, you need to deploy your mind. You need to use your mind. You need to be sentient. You need to be conscious. You need to have intelligence in order to answer the question why, the why question, any why question. So that raises an interesting thing. If in the absence of a conscious, intelligent observer, sentient observer, life has no meaning, because that's exactly what I just said. Without such an observer, life has no meaning. It has purpose, goal, but no meaning. If in the absence of it has no meaning, then the meaning resides not in life, but in the observer. Life is meaningless. Because if all observers were to disappear tomorrow, life would continue. It's inexorable. It's like a machinery, you know, but it would have no meaning. That's if you adopt the individualistic point of view, if you adopt God's point of view, let's say something like God's point of view, then life maybe is part of a bigger plan. What is this bigger plan? Can you ever know this bigger plan? No, you cannot, because you are a finite being. You are limited, whereas God is unlimited, infinite. Using your mind, you can know nothing about God. So you cannot decipher or decode God's plan, and life is part of God's plan, so you cannot decipher or decode life. I think what I'm trying to tell you, in short, is that the question, what's the meaning of life, is a meaningless question, which cannot be answered, ever, in principle. We call these kind of answers undecidable statements, undecidable theorems. I'll give you another example of such a question that can never ever be decided. Does God exist? I'll give you another example of such a question. What is consciousness? These questions, what is the meaning of life? These questions, in principle, can never be decided, can never be answered. There's no answer to this question. I just explained to you why, because if it is dependent on an observer, then life is meaningless. If it's dependent on God, you cannot find the answer, and so on. And I can create other frameworks and prove to you that there isn't a framework that you can imagine where life would have a meaning. None. So the answer is, as far as we are concerned, life is meaningless, but only because we are limited. We are limited beings. As far as we are, but we cannot be who we are not. We cannot be God, for example. So it's not like you say, okay, we are limited, but if there is a being who is not limited, that being will find meaning in life. How do you know? How do you know? You're limited. You can say nothing about an unlimited being. That's why when I hear people say, God wants you to do this, or God, it's laughable. How do you know? How do you know God's mind? Is God's mind just an extension of your mind? Or maybe 10 times your mind? Or what are you talking about? If God has a mind, which in itself is laughable, if you ask me, but if God has a mind, it is nothing like your mind. There's nothing you can say about that mind. With any. So, in good philosophy, we isolate these questions, the undecidables, and we never deal with them. We never discuss them. So all the philosophers that you see that are doing like what's the meaning of life and what is God's mind, they are bad philosophers. They don't know philosophy, or they are doing bad philosophy, or they want to make money or whatever. It's not good philosophy. There are some questions which we have to accept we will never have the answers to. In principle, they're unanswerable.
There's one question that I wanted to completely off topic of what we
I think
were.
we should make this the last one because it's 1.5 hours. No one will
Okay,
watch that
so
long.
let's close it with this one, which relates to narcissism. There's something that I was discussing with a friend, which is like, if a narcissist could press a button to stop being a narcissist, would he actually press it? Would it make sense for him to press it?
No. Imagine that I go to Donald Trump and I say Don, because we are very close friends. I call him first name basis. Don, I said to him, it's time we had a chat, heart to heart. You are a narcissist. You have a severe mental illness called narcissistic personality disorder, and I want to treat you. I believe I can make some progress with you. Donald will look at me and say, why? What for? I'm a multi-billionaire. I'm twice president of the United States. I've had the most gorgeous women on earth. I've lived a lucky life. I'm perfectly happy with myself. I think I'm the greatest person to have ever lived. Give me one good reason to push the button. Why would I push a button?
But aren't there narcissists who have suffered massively and have not had
Yes, but
those
it's not because
outcomes?
of their narcissism, according to them. It's because of other people usually. This is
Right.
not known as alloplastic defense. Narcissists blame other people. So other people were envious, or other people were too stupid to understand the narcissist, or other people were simply malevolent, or whatever. So it's always Other people, other institutions, the situation, fate, maybe, whatever. And even when the narcissist acknowledges that he has had some contribution,
Yeah.
he didn't have a choice. He had to do it. Or if the narcissist accepts that he acted, his actions were wrong, he hurt people, harmed people, or whatever, and so on, he would rarely take responsibility. Um, he would say, okay, I'm willing to modify my antisocial or abrasive behaviors, or I'm willing not to harm people anymore. But that proves that I'm great. That proves I'm altruistic and charitable. And look what a wonderful person I
Mm.
am. My morality is. So we have a type of narcissist called pro-social narcissist, communal narcissist. That's a narcissist that goes around and says, look how great I am. I'm a do-gooder. I'm altruistic. I'm loving. I'm compassionate. I'm charitable. Many of the gurus, online and offline, they are actually pro-social narcissists. There are studies starting in 2020. There are studies that show that majority of the leaders, sorry, not majority. There are studies that show that there is an infiltration in the leadership of social justice movements. There's an infiltration of narcissists and psychopaths. People like Greta Thunberg, who is a rank narcissist, I mean, complete narcissist, is an example, of course. So all these social justice movements, in the top, they have many narcissists and psychopaths who claim to do good, claim empathy for the collective, they want to make society better, and so on and so forth. So non-narcissists will push the button, but what they may do, they may redesign the room or redesign the machine, and then claim that they're the moral people, they're the charitable, they're altruistic, they're activists, they're full of love and compassion, Mother Teresa, for example, and so on and so forth. And then it's you who dares to ask the question. You dare to ask the question. That proves that you are pusillanimous. You are, you are not charitable. You lack empathy. You are not altruistic. You are not moral. You're stupid. Too stupid to understand. You're envious, and so on. So they will demonize you. They value you if you dare to suggest that they should push the button. And Donald Trump would end the conversation with me saying, Sam, I understand that you envy me. I understand that. And I know that perhaps you are not as intelligent as you think you are, and you can't grasp my greatness, my contributions to humanity, and so on and so forth. That's okay. We are still friends. Don't worry. We're still friends because I forgive you. That's how the conversation would end.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Sam, for doing the interview. It was an absolute pleasure. I really,
Thank
really enjoyed it.
thank you.
And
So did I.
and yeah,
And I hope you forgive me.
no, that's completely fine. I love your answers.
Regards to your friends, your
Okay.
friend. Okay.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.